So Final Destination Bloodlines is the sixth entry in the Final Destination series and the first one since 2011. This one is directed by Zach Leposki and Adam Stein, and it's about this woman who discovers that her grandmother prevented this building collapse 50 years ago, and she saved a whole bunch of people. However, she soon discovers that her family was not actually supposed to survive, and so now she has to prevent death from taking all of her family members, and we have a new Final Destination movie. So I'm gonna be honest, I was not a big fan of the Final Destination movies. I watched the first one a long time ago. Thought it was definitely 2000. It was definitely a cheesy movie, if I'm being honest. But at the same time, I was thinking it was a lot to take in. It kind of made me a little anxious about various things for a while. And so I kind of avoided the rest of the movies, but then I decided to watch them in preparation for this movie to know what I'm getting into. And after watching the movies as a whole, I kind of just got tired of the gimmick. It just kind of felt like every movie in the franchise was just kind of repeating itself in some way, and I was just kind of getting tired of them, and they were just a lot to handle at the same time. So with this new one coming out, I figured I would at least give it a chance to see it in theaters. It seems a lot of people really seem to like this. Final Destination fans seem to really enjoy it, and if I'm being honest, I'm actually going to recommend this movie. This movie was actually a lot of fun. I can kind of see why people enjoy the franchise, but I do like with this movie that they do at least try to subvert expectations while at least kind of respecting the franchise. So this is probably my favorite Final Destination movie by default, but in a good way. First off, let's get to the actors. I thought most of the actors did a pretty good job. Some of the ones that stood out were Caitlin Santawana. I thought she did a really good job. She plays the lead in this movie. I thought Richard Harmon, who plays one of the cousins, he was pretty good as kind of a dickhead, but he was kind of funny at times. Raya Kilstedt, who plays one of the mothers in the movie, I thought she did a decent job. Gabrielle Rose and Breck Basinger, who play the same character just at different times, I thought both of them did a pretty good job. And also Tony Todd. Unfortunately, this was Tony Todd's last movie, and it was weird because, like, again, I have no emotional attachment to this franchise, but he was really good in this movie, and basically it just felt very poignant. With his passing, it felt right in a strange way. It was like a fitting goodbye for him and his character. I will miss Tony Todd. He was fantastic in Candyman, and he was probably the only consistent thing in these movies, the only consistent person in these movies. And I thought it actually kind of made me emotional, even though I'm not a fan of the franchise. Meanwhile, the thing that the Final Destination franchise is known for are the over-the-top sequences, and there are some that are actually really cool. The building collapse in the movie, like at the beginning of the movie, that was really cool. It took like 20 minutes, and it's kind of going for a little bit, and eventually when the building does collapse, it's just over the top. It's gory. It's like they can still do a lot of stuff like this, even if it's like 50 years in the past in the timeline and such. There's one in a hospital that's pretty cool. There's one in a tattoo parlor you kind of see in the trailers, but it's still really cool to kind of like figure out what's going to happen in various scenes and such. The editing of these movies is also very underrated. Constantly, they're kind of like editing to make you think, okay, maybe it's this thing that's going to get them, or maybe it's this thing that's going to get them, and just kind of continues to keep you on your toes about like who's going to get it, how they're going to get it, and the movie constantly surprises you in some way. But without doubt, they give away a few in the trailers, but it's still fun to kind of predict, okay, where is this going to go? How's this going to end? And it's like, that's very fun. But despite the dark nature of this movie can be pretty funny. One of the characters has a gruesome death, and I'm not going to spoil it, but it does involve metal at times. Like, there's a moment in the movie where, I won't spoil it, but it's pretty funny. It kind of made me laugh right before they're killed and such. The movie does have a dark sense of humor, and I feel like at this point in the franchise, I kind of are at least a little bit aware of like how ridiculous a lot of these deaths are, and I think this movie actually can be funny, surprisingly. And also, I do like with this movie that it does subvert expectations while at least remaining respectful to the franchise. For instance, the main character in the movie is not someone who has premonitions. It's actually someone who kind of has like these nightmares that are kind of like premonitions, whereas like the grandmother at least had premonitions, so at least she was in line with some of the other main characters of these movies. The main character of this movie actually doesn't, and I actually thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, that's an interesting turn. Or, we kind of see like with all these other movies, it's like, oh, it's these group of people who kind of were just avoiding an accident in some way. And this movie, it definitely kind of changes a little bit because like it's about a family that realizes, oh, they shouldn't have been born in the first place. So I'm thinking that is actually even more fascinating than just saying, oh, it's just a group of random people who kind of were just stuck in a horrible situation, and they're just by luck, avoided a terrible tragedy, only to get into this tragedy again. And I do think that at least that this way it is kind of at least interesting and a little bit more. It kind of made me think a little bit more. And also, there are tributes to the franchise that even someone like me who's not a big fan of the franchise can at least say it's like, okay, I understood that reference a little bit. So at least it's made by people who have a respect for the franchise and still want to have fun with it, but also want to take new directions. But there are a couple things about this movie that I didn't really care for. First up, there are some questions about the choices that are made with how death kind of like goes through like the people in this family and such. And I'm like, wouldn't it make more sense to do this and this rather than do this and this? When you see the movie, you'll kind of understand. But I was kind of thinking, it's like, why didn't they go in that direction first? Would have made a little bit more sense, but I digress. And also, there are a couple sequences in the movie where it's like there's one really cool sequence about halfway through, which I won't spoil by any means. But when you find out another plot point in this movie, it kind of makes the previous sequence feel unnecessary and just kind of feels like filler. And I feel like for a movie like this, it doesn't necessarily need filler. It actually could just go, it could still be like, 90 or so minutes and such. And I feel like it would have it wouldn't have hurt the movie at all to take it out completely, especially considering what we later find out. But that plot point is actually dropped after it's mentioned. It's like they literally never bring it up again. Also, there are a couple things in the opening sequence where it's like it may not make sense, but I kind of let it slide. And also, even though they do have like a lot of stuff from the original movies and kind of like at least tributes to things that happened in the original movies and such, there are a couple that I'm like, did you really need to go in that direction? And no spoilers by any means, but I just felt like it kind of put me in a dour mood at times. But like then again, this franchise can put people in dour moods. It's about people just constantly dying, even though they just avoided death. But even despite all that, I still had a pretty good time with this movie. This is a fun movie, and I can understand why so many people kind of like, I don't want to say enjoy these movies, but have a good time with the movies. The deaths are over the top and creative. They are ridiculous. The editing in this franchise, I think, is really good. The performances themselves are pretty good. It can be funny in a dark way, but like, I felt like that actually helps the movie rather than hurts it. And also, this movie definitely, I felt like it subverted expectations while at least still being respectful from a franchise. And even though I don't really like some of the plot points in this movie that are just unnecessary, and also some things where it's like, wouldn't this make more sense than what you actually did? But I digress. I still had a fun time with it. If you're not a fan of the Final Destination franchise, maybe give this one a chance because at least it's kind of different enough from the other movies, but it still at least has a lot of the stuff that would make Final Destination fans at least excited. So I'll give Final Destination Bloodlines 3 out of 4 stars. See it. So, what is your favorite Final Destination movie? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.